that is probably just YouTube. Because I was like, nobody, let me continue to smile. And that's, as do I. Being in touch with those and stuff are really good. Yeah, there was a little passive aggressive anger in my dream. So I was like, oh, where's that? What's going on? You know, like
old bookshop, like obviously specializing in rare books. And then poof, like this entire dream, I remember being in that store. I remember what it's like to be on the second floor of that store. Like all of it just came back. And so I'm standing there, busy New York City street, mouth agape, just like 10 to 12 feet high. And I don't know how big, but it's all folded up. I have no space for it right now.
Yeah, I recently moved and I shed a number of large paintings. So when I was young,
it was a bunch of synchronicities. I got the chance to meet some wonderful people. And so this woman who has this beautiful farm, it's about 10 acres, it's outside of town.
Because that's just kind of, you know, reflecting back to me, what's frustrating me about how I'm living or how I'm thinking or how I'm being. So that's what makes it so great to be able to like be that observer and just be like, okay, well, what about me? You know, like, well, where can I take a step into, you know, like whatever. I come up with the word discomfort or whatever. And we talked about that word. Well, we're gonna talk about the word comfortable, but yeah. So that's but alignment is always so nice, and it's rare. It's a rare thing to be like completely aligned and everything fall into place and being just kind of cognizant that like your work, you're being held. Right. And whether or not that's obvious is neither here nor there, because the whole point is knowing that you're being held, and you're being held, and in my terminology and the way I look at it, is you're being held by you, which is everything, right? Like it's not this little thing, you know, it's not separate.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. That's been one of my mantras the last couple of months, is just coming back to I am held. I am held. Because I think there's a tendency that I'm aware of in myself of feeling like I need to hustle. I need to make something happen. I need to push. And that did work for me in some ways when I was trying to succeed in aspects of our culture where that sort of mentality is needed. Right. But that's not going to work for me now as a coach and as someone trying to like walk an awakening path. That's really going to take me outside of myself. So coming back to, I am held. I am held. I don't have to make anything happen. Just go with it.
Right.
It's a hard one.
Beautiful. And what brought you there?
Well, speaking of discomfort, I mean, I think I've been reframing my perspective on pain, because I think a lot of discomfort, like this winter was really hard for me. And I hit some lows and I was really sorting through a lot of shadow. And I have this idea that pain is always a bad thing. And I'm learning that's not the case. Pain is so many things. It can be bad, right? It can mean that you're pushing through in a way that you shouldn't, like physically or something like that. But it can also be a predecessor for real growth and transformation. And gosh darn it, I have trouble sitting with that. So yeah, going through a really long several weeks of struggling with being out of alignment and really being uncomfortable and facing patterns I thought I'd dealt with already, all of that stewing together, and then realizing, wait, maybe I can just let this go and be held and try that on and see how that feels for a while.
Right. Well, and how's that going? I mean, it sounds like it's going well.
It's going great. It's going great. I'm getting my portrait done. Like, this is awesome.
That's great. Yeah, like so I mean, you're coming from academia, right? Like, I'm working really hard at, and I have been not working hard, you know what I mean, I think, um, at being able to let go of a lot of the hangups I have around, school and stuff. So I wasn't good in school. There are a lot of things, but it's just like this idea of traditional approaches of like, I have to, in order to do well, you need to like me, right? Like, and I have to do things that you want me to do, right? I have to fall in line in certain ways, and I don't do that very well. Or I haven't done that very well. And so a big aspect of like my growth is definitely kind of learning that, you know, I'm not fighting a current by doing what I want, right? It's like I'm in a current, but there are beliefs, and this is where a lot of this anger is coming up these days. There's a lot of beliefs that it's like, well, I'm doing what I want, so nobody else wants to hear it. Nobody else wants to experience it, right? And there are these beliefs, and I can track that back to certain places because of the work that I do and whatnot. And so I understand it. And so really exposing it, being curious about it, and allowing that to heal right now is really kind of where I'm at. But having said that, and I mentioned you're coming from academia because I'm gonna say some other things, and because that's because the academic world is very much a very an environment in which you give a lot for future gains, right? Like they just dangle this thing. They're able, because of the way school is, right? So if you believe in academia, you believe in this, I will do what you want for future gains. And they created this, right? And so we as the grand we that are within the world of academia, like, often lie to ourselves that that is the path forward, when in reality the path is like within us, and like, and our value is within us, not within this institution that is dangling this carrot in front of us, waiting for us to fall in line.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It fascinates me how it really trains us. Like, delayed gratification is good as human beings, but there's a paradox there, because if you invest too much in delayed gratification, it actually moves into a space of self-denial.
Mhm.
And it's hard to tease apart what is the good and what's the not helpful. Like, I personally, I'm sorry, you're about to say something.
No, well, I'm glad you said not helpful, because like good and bad really, like, because
Yeah,
right.
right.
Okay, go
Helpful
ahead.
or not helpful. Um, I've been thinking about the word discipline a lot lately. Like, that's been I'm doing some writing and really thinking, trying to tease apart, because I feel like in my life I've gone the whole spectrum of like what it means to be disciplined and to be an academic within a particular discipline and pushing yourself toward a goal that can take 9 or 10 years to achieve, which is really just like, once you defend your dissertation and you're a doctor, then there's so much more, right? Going on and on.
Right, yeah.
But then, so then I sort of have been experimenting with moving into this space where, okay, I'm going to trust that if I move toward what feels good, that is on my path. But that can feel kind of flabby in terms of discipline, because there's a certain amount of regularity that is helpful to keep honing your craft, right? To keep being better at what you do. So where do you find that beautiful sort of balance where you're not like ruthlessly pushing yourself, but you're also not like flapping in the wind? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And there it is. From the doctor. Straight from the doctor.
Oh, I have to be very clear. I'm ABD. I never finished. I'm a failed academic. I walked away.
What's ABD?
ABD means that I had taken all of my comprehensive exams. I had done everything except defend a dissertation. I had 2 chapters written, 2 more to go, and there were a bunch of things that happened, and it just became clear to me that academia was not the place for me, and it was time to take the leap and walk away. So
at that point, I'm just like, we invested everything, and now we're just gonna stop. No, and I absolutely respect and honor and am appreciative of that 100%. You know, like as an addict, right? Like one of the things, you know, like, I mean, I invested 13 years in my addiction, right? Like that's a long time. And I was an expert. You know what I mean? Like so to know when to turn around is really important. And really kind of defending your dissertation, whether you do it in the future or not, doing it during the space while you were in the space that you were in would have only solidified you into continuing to lie to yourself and giving them more power than you gave yourself anyway. So it was, you know, like, of course, like, kudos.
it was an interesting choice. I have no desire to finish. I have no desire to go back into that world. I think what's funny is that I loved teaching. I really loved being a teacher, and I loved art history. I loved teaching it. I loved introducing people to things. I loved challenging people with new concepts. But that's kind of what I do as a meditation teacher and a life coach. I'm using those same skills. It's just even more attuned to me and who I am and who I love.
Yeah.
I needed that to get here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm taking a stab. Are you a firstborn?
I'm an only child. Yeah.
You're an only child. Oh, wow. There it is. Okay. So yeah. So, so you know where I'm going with that. What's that?
I want to know more about that.
Well, so I don't have a skill of any kind in this realm. I listen and I pay attention to you, right? Like, and so you know, while I'm doing this, like, I'm hearing you. One, you have a very specific way of going about things, right? It's very, you know, my guess is it resembles the head of household that in which you grew up in. And this is how we all, right? Like, as a firstborn, we want to be the leader of the pack, right? And the leader of the pack in the household is either going to be the you know, like the disciplinarian or the person who works, or, you know, like it could be the mother or father. It doesn't matter. But it's how you understand the leader in that, like, where do you want to go? And so, you know, I see an early life, at least, a very type A personality, right? And that type A personality led you to an awakening that that being type A, you type A your ass out of, right? Where you're just like, no, I'm just going to leave now, right? Like if you were a second born, you would have finished that fucking degree just because we don't, because we have to prove to others that we're right because we're second born. So we already start on the back foot, right? Because we can't be like the firstborn. I'm a secondborn. And we, because we can't compete, we have to be a support, right, in the home. Now, this is general, and it very much depends on how the child interprets these things. It doesn't have to do with any reality. It's about interpretation.
Yeah.
So yeah, so right, and so like you move forward into this kind of like type A defense, which is like, I'm going to leave this because it's not suiting me and stuff like that. And so that's why I said, are you firstborn? You said you're an only child, which gives you more freedom to just be able to say, I am held, because you were the only one that was held in the home, right? And so there is deep belief of that. The cognitive belief, the frontal lobe believing that, is a very tricky thing. And that's what, like, that's why you have a mantra. That's why you take these steps, because you believe it. But the brain is a loud and scared organ, and you have invested a lot in that organ.
I did. So much money, so much time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm not psychoanalyzing you, by the way. I'm just
maybe a little bit.
It's definitely not my approach. It's just like, we're talking. That's
This is what happens when two people who are relentlessly doing their inner work talk to each other. It just like can't help but come out.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I'm going to continue. You tell me more stories about you if you want more analysis.
Let's see. Well, I will say that carrying on sort of the theme of my type A-ness and stepping out of that, stepping into a place of being an artist has been hard, because I have to wrestle with productivity, quote unquote. And it's amazing to me, because I've been self-employed for almost a decade now, and I still have that inner sort of like program that tells me I should be more productive, or I should be able to justify what I did with my day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's so great when I have a day that like I am so painting focused and something really wants to come through. But the real trick is being able to still feel that level of comfort if I didn't, quote unquote, produce something that day, or if I didn't see clients, like seeing clients gives me this hit. Like, I love the work, but it also gives me this hit of I've done something.
Right. And it can be documented.
Right.
Right. And so that's a big thing for for me, like, money and things like that are never have been motivators for me. And so, like, even though I've been able to get by on my own, I haven't been able to get by on my own. You know what I mean? And that becomes a difficult sort of balance of like, where's my value and what is that? How does that work out? And I know, like, future gains, right? Like, I know that I'm on the right path, and I know that I'm happy, and I know that I'm kind of doing these things. And so but still, productivity and like, what am I drawn to today? And asking that question and doing those things are really important. Like, productivity has been a thing that's like, pandemic starts, I start like 3 talks, and then I do these portraits and like other stuff like that, right? Like, I just start going, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Right. And then I just fill my schedule, like, stuff to do, and I don't want to defend it ever, right? As if it's good, it's bad, it is what it is. And I'm doing it. And if I didn't want to do it, I walk away from it, or if I don't want to do it, I can just say, no, that's fine. I don't have to do it today. It's not like hard, fast rules. So when go
ahead.
When did you fall in love with schooling?
Oh gosh, so early on. I'm pretty sure I wanted to be a professor by the time I was 9 years old.
Wow.
I think that was
no, I'm just kidding.
Oh well. I love learning. I'm deeply curious, but I think it was also a class consciousness. It was a way, I was the first person in my family to graduate a 4-year college, much less go on to graduate school like I did.
Yeah.
And I think it was a way of stepping out of the sort of lower income Southern roots that I come from. And I thought that was how you win at life, is to be the smartest person and to have a job title that tells everyone you're smart. And, you know, so there was a lot of genuine love in it, but there was also like a need for escape.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
My guess is you did well in school.
Yeah. I was really good at coursework. I was really good at going to lectures, and I was super on taking my notes. And, oh God, yeah. I was like a sponge. I wanted to know, and of course I wanted to achieve. I was looking for validation, and here was a really good system set up for validation.
That's right. That's all it's set up for, right? Like it's set up like, we know what you're going to need, right? We have your answer. Just come to us and we will continue to validate you throughout this whole process. And like, I always, like when I say academic sometimes with a little, I don't want it to seem like that. And I want to express that, like, I know I have my shit for that. And like, I'm always trying to open it up. But there is this, what I always look for when I talk to academics, this place of like, you have been involved with this validation cycle for so long. Where is that seeping into things that you don't need it to, right? And you don't need it anywhere, but like, where today you have enough confidence in yourself that you don't need that. And that's always something that I'm always looking for when I work with clients, or something that are, like, if I know they're from an academic background, I go, okay, well, here's a whole set of things that we can look at where it's just like, okay, you're constantly looking for validation in your relationships. You're looking for validation in like your diet. You're looking for validation in like your choices of what shows to watch on TV, right? Like, and it's like really kind of trying to help my clients and just be cognizant of that or whatever.
For sure. And as someone who has lived that, there is a lot of that.
Yeah.
I feel the need, and I cannot believe this is happening, but I'll just say it. Like, I feel the need to defend a little bit, because I think that there is still, I see such beauty still in the foundations of academic research and study and teaching. It's just, it's been warped by this institution that has ossified and become incredibly abusive and toxic. But I knew a lot of people who did what they loved and studied things with such curiosity and passion, and they taught with curiosity and passion. Mm-hmm. And the teaching wasn't always just about validation, although that was the sort of metric by which we used to just move forward.
Right.
So that I still love about it. And I kind of, in that it makes me want to go back to the trivium quadrivium, the like Middle Ages, the medieval concept of academic learning, before it got so warped and twisted,
Well, one of the problems with academia in our age bracket, I'm assuming we're close to the same age, but is that we made academia something that everyone was supposed to want.
Right.
And I believe that about 12% of the population need to be in academia. And we can't, like, I am not a proponent of general literacy. I don't think everybody should be forced to learn how to read, because I believe that if we don't force you how to read, then we who know how to read need to be able to communicate with you and not just accept the fact that we have the right way of communicating. And that's the same with addicts, and that's the same, like, just because you don't have an addiction doesn't mean you don't have something to recover. Right? Just and that's what's happened throughout our society, is we have chosen very specific things and we say these are good everything else has to try and work towards those. And we have really praised, like white intellectual businessmen, right? Like, or whatever, right? And that's problematic, because once you threaten that, everything else gets pushed down, right? So trans people get pushed down, gay people get pushed down, women get pushed down, everything gets pushed down from the top, and that top is your belief of your culture. And that's why it's like, I want the conversation to be had, rather than, and that's why, and again, I don't say academia is bad. It's good for 12% of the population.
Yeah, I was a good candidate for that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. And I'm so grateful for that, because we need that, right? We need people doing studies.
Yeah.
We need researchers. We need people that are writing those books that nobody else wants to read. And of course, that's a joke.
Oh, I hear you.
Okay.
Trust me, I was writing a dissertation in the most niche possible sort of subject matter you can imagine. So I know.
What was it?
I knew when I brought it up you were going to ask. Are you familiar with the Borgia family of Renaissance Romance?
Absolutely. I'm an artist. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I studied 19th century British art, painting in particular. And so my dissertation was on representations of Lucrezia Borgia in 19th century painting.
That is pretty niche. I don't even know. I can't name them. I can see her representation, I believe, but I couldn't tell you. I can't pinpoint them, but yes, that is niche.
So here's the thing, these are not great works of art in the way that we think of great works of art. But I personally believe that some of the most interesting, informative, and valuable works of art are not the great, like, visionary works of art. They're Absolutely. The mediocre, the things that everyone loves, the blockbusters, because guess what? Those tell you a lot about a culture and what it values, what it holds up, what it wants to see. So that's what I was studying, were
that's beautiful.
second-rate works of art of a subject that was really indicative of cultural conflict.
Yeah.
And that was my very academic thing.
You could have defended that easily.
Well, maybe if you were on my committee.
So as somebody that doesn't even have a bachelor's degree, I want to be like on committees like that. Like, I know I probably can't be, but it's just, it is because I want academia to come to me, right? Because it is something that I see has value. And I know that, like, my understanding of it is this thing of just like, well, all you want to do is tell me to follow you, and so many people have, and so you got this value from, like, that sort of response. And so, I look at that and go, I'm going to step away from it. I'm going to have you come after me, like, right? Like, that's ridiculous, but that's still like that idea that is in there.
I get it. That's why academics do publish books for general consumption. Right. You're not the only one. We'll step out of the ivory tower for a while and write something that might be a bestseller.
So where are you living now? Are you back in your house then?
I live in a little cabin in the woods west of Charlottesville in a place called Crozet.
Okay, so you're still renting your house, or is that?
I sold it.
Oh.
I sold it a couple of years ago. Yeah. After living on the farm, I realized me and that house, we didn't fit. My life was changing. It was time to let it go. So I sold it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so now I'm back to the renter's life, which I kind of like, because when you sell a house, you absolve yourself of that giant list of home improvement that needs to be done. It's just gone now. Right. I don't worry about it anymore.
And those things just come up because you can. right? It's not it's like when you're a renter, you're like, well, the kitchen's fine.
Well, I had a very old house because I love old houses. So after buying it, I had to put on a new roof. And then in the process of doing that, I discovered the wiring could use to work. And then, like, it's just like this cascade of things. So it wasn't just like I was feeling like I wanted to do things. There were things that would have made it cheaper to live there, more insulated, that sort of thing. She was a very drafty house.
Well, old houses tend to be, yeah.
Yeah. But nope, now I live in a little cabin and I love it. I'm at the top of a hill, and at the bottom of the hill is the Meacham's River. So I get to live a very short walk from a river. And just the other night, I heard coyotes not far from here. So that was fun. Birds are everywhere.
When I go on hikes, I get to experience coyotes a lot. There's an area that I go past, I call Coyote Pass, because it's like a little ridge in between the suburbs and the forest preserve. And so like coyotes kind of like do a lot of going between there.
So do you see them?
Oh yeah, all the time.
See, I've never seen them. I only hear them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get out for early morning hikes. So I like to hit the trail about 5:30 or so, like before the sun comes up and whatnot, or as it's coming up, and depending on what time of year. And then and then do a hike. And in this area, a lot of deer, a lot of coyote. So I get to, depending on the time of year it is and whatnot. I saw a mom and her 2 pups the other day.
Wow.
Coyote. Yeah. And that was that. I mean, they were bigger pups, so they were probably a year old, but they were young.
Very cool.
Yeah.
We had a fox family on the farm that I got to watch the whole transition. Like the vixen, she would cry at night. She would do that terrifying scream that foxes make, like sometimes right under my window.
I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, so there's a particular time of year. The way foxes let each other know they're open for business is this truly like nerve-wracking cry that they make. And then a couple months later, saw her with her kits playing. Got to see Dad bring a dead squirrel back to the den. That was pretty cool. Nice. So yeah, it was really fun to feel like we shared the space with them, although we also had chickens. So that complicated the relationship somewhat. We did not want the foxes taking the chickens.
Why?
The chickens were ours. They were our eggs.
I want to see what happens with me. I was born and raised in the city. I want to move to the Spanish countryside. And I want to do my best to be able to protect my property, whether that be, like chickens or whatever, rabbits. I don't eat eggs, so rabbits are more kind of my speed. And I look at it in this way of like, well, if something gets them, right? Like and I don't know if I'm going to be okay with that. That's the kind of relationship I have with my cat. She's not an outdoor cat, but the last place I lived, I had a window that walked out onto the roof, and I talked to my cat and I said, hey, there's hawks and other things out there. You can go out on the roof if you want, but you're a little guy and you're in danger. And she'd go out and she'd come in. Sometimes she'd sit on the ledge and like inside. Sometimes she'd go out and wander the roof and stuff. But like I'm always like, look, if you go, shit ain't my problem. That's kind of my approach.
I hear, yeah, control might still be something I'm working with. Yeah. I'll tell you, nothing makes you feel more powerless than realizing that the intruder in your chicken pen is a skunk, because I'm not going anywhere near that skunk. And so, ladies, you are on your own.
So tell me, so again, I grew up in a city, and my and I'm gathering you didn't.
Well,
You said
I
you didn't.
did. I grew up in sort of like a suburban part of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, but that's still
Yeah.
North Carolina. What's like? Can you just what did you love? What did you hate? What was your experience of like growing up?
Oh,
Wow, that's already oh, like that's heavy. I didn't think it was gonna be a heavy conversation.
yeah, I didn't like where I grew up at all. I think Charlotte's a more interesting city now, and I think it has more of an urban component. But when I was growing up, Charlotte was just sprawl. It was just strip malls and roads, and it took 45 minutes to get anywhere. And I lived in sort of a somewhat planned neighborhood built maybe in the 50s, so a ranch style house, half acre lot, yards, just houses everywhere. Not a lot of nature. Um, yeah, it was pretty boring, which is why now I love where I live, because I can see the contrast. Like, I realized, oh, this is what I was missing, is that there's this magic out in nature that I only got when we went camping, or my dad was a deer hunter, so sometimes he would take me out hunting with him. So we'd go for long walks in the woods.
I love venison. Oh my god,
Yeah, yeah.
fucking
Okay,
good.
I have to share with you, this is completely off topic, but it's very on brand for me. There is this crow that has been hanging around today, and he's back. And I think I'm going to need to paint a crow today.
Nice.
He's
I love the
beautiful.
crow. The crow is a smart animal.
Yes. Yes. And it's going to be very hard to paint something that's all black.
We'll talk art sometime. Well, because it's not. It's funny. One time, like my mom had a big white dog, all white. It was like a sled dog. I don't know what kind it was because I'm not knowledgeable about dogs. But it was all white and fluffy and stuff. And she was like, "Well, I don't think you'll be able to paint it because it's all white." I was like, "Can you see it?" She was like, "Well, yeah." I was like, "Well, then I'll be able to paint it."
No, I know. But it's more of a challenge, right? Like, you have to be a little more inventive. Anyway, I'm still learning my craft. Let's just put it that way. I'm still learning my craft, so I'm gonna muddle through. I mean, I painted a turkey vulture not too long ago that it turned out beautifully. I loved it.
Yeah.
But when I first sat down to do it, I was like, well, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah. No, like the thing is so much like what I'll say about what, like your experience of the crow is that when you look at it, your mind says it's all black. Shutting your mind off and just using your eyes as if you're looking at it for the first time without the assumption, you're going to see a lot of things. You're going to see where, like, how do I know it's round? And you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, oh, it's because of these blue highlights. It's because of these purple undertones. It's this reflected light and all of these things. But again, drawing or painting from our mind, like, that's the whole, like, oh, if I draw a circle, like, because I'm drawing a can and I draw a circle on top and that top just flips up and the can is underneath it, right? It's just like, no, stop and look, right? What do you actually see?
Yeah.
And that's fun. Like, again, that's like discovery of like, how much am I assuming what I'm seeing? Like, or how much am I actually taking in what I'm seeing?
Which is meditative, right? That's the
Absolutely.
whole point of meditation, is to look at the world in a different way.
Yeah. This is taking me longer. Like, it's just because I'm talking so much. We're just going to continue.
So yeah, now you've heard about my neighborhood where I grew up in Charlotte. Let's see. I don't know. I hope I will always live in places that have a little more variety to them. Charlotte is so flat. It's in the quote unquote Piedmont between the mountains of North Carolina and the beach, but it's pretty it's flat. And moving to Charlottesville, I moved here for graduate school. And being up in the mountains, I mean, I know that people out west would not call these mountains, but they're mountains to me.
I live in Chicago, so so we're fucking flat. Right? Like,
yes, but you have the lake.
Yes.
That changes things.
Yes. That is that. Like, I love sitting out at the lake, looking at that, going, that is nature, right? You can't tame that. Like, you can't change that, right? Like, you can change the beach, and you can change all of this. That's fine. Like, I get that. But when you look out at the water, that's it. And that's amazing.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. A friend of mine has recently gotten me more and more interested in sailing. He has a boat, and so he's taken us out. He has challenged me past I'm scared. I get scared on sailboats. And he and my friends have encouraged me to like push through a little bit and a little bit more. And it's taught me a lot about surrender, but it's also given me this wonderful experience. Talk about feeling held, being on water. That is such a comforting, wonderful thing for me that I wouldn't have known had I not taken the risk and gotten out there on that boat.
Yeah. I've been sailing a couple times, but I love water. I look at it this way. When I'm like time to retire, I want to buy a tugboat, and I want to kind of live on I don't want to live on the boat. I want to live again in the northern Spanish countryside. And I want to just have a tugboat, and I want to have like I can only imagine that there is no real need for tugboats in northern Spain. but I want to do it anyway. I want to be an old man on a tugboat with my cat, and I want to just like be.
Oh, it sounds like an amazing dream.
It is.
You'll have to send me a postcard once you get there.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot has to happen between now and then. But I have not heard that dream from anybody else, so I know it's mine. It's always something. You never know where you pick up some ideas. So when a wacky one comes in and you're like, yeah, that's what I want. It's yours. That's pure. That's pure me.
A tugboat. And you're already a helper, so it makes sense that you would want a boat that's a helper.
Oh, look at you putting things together. Yeah. No joke. Again, here's an interesting aspect to what you just said. I'm a helper with a belief that what I have, people don't want. We talked about that earlier, recall? Mm-hmm. And now I'm talking about getting a tugboat and being in an area where I already perceive that people don't want that.
Wow.
Just saying. Like that's something that's how I do my shit. I go, oh, these are beliefs. They're not real, right? These are beliefs that I'm carrying and I need to be able to look at, and I need to be able to address.
We're all so complicated, and isn't that fun?
Yes. It is very fun.
There is nothing I could have studied as an academic that would be as complicated and engaging as
You are.
person, you know,
Right.
as people are with our issues and our compensation patterns. It's, yeah. A teacher of mine talks about the human experience as being sort of this big game that the divine plays to see how deeply the divine can work itself into separation. And then the process of awakening is the divine now trying to like uncoil and come back out of those depths. I really
Yeah,
like that.
that is beautiful.
I can tell you must be getting close. You're very intent.
Nope. There are things that you have to be careful of as an artist sometimes, right? Like, and I'm not like I'm doing it, but there's an intensity about some areas, because like some of the things that define who we are also those things that, if misinterpreted, can make it all fall apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that I'm playing with right now that I want to make sure gets proper attention. And there's a hole to this that I'm really liking, and so I want to make sure that it, like I get very intense at this stage, because once I start to almost get there, like I'm at the peak, and then eventually it just kind of like just works its way through. And like I said, these take about an hour and a half usually at most, and that I think we're gonna go the distance.
So when you work on paintings not with a subject, do you have things playing in the background or do you prefer silence?
You mean like noise, like music or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I prefer silence. Almost always. Again, that's not a. Yeah, it's not like, like if you were to walk in and I had music on while I'm painting, you'd be like, I thought you liked it. Yes, of course. Right?
I
Yes,
mean, just like in general, like what we gravitate towards.
yes,
Yeah.
I prefer silence.
I the reason I ask is because I'm noticing that I like to have something playing, usually a podcast. And I think it's because it gives my brain, my mental chatter mind, an anchor so that I can actually do the work. Because if my brain is fully on board, the like critical impulse is too strong and I don't make a lot of progress. But you put on a podcast, like some like silly movie recap podcast in the background, and then I can really dive in.
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, thoughts.
They'll fuck you. It's 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 tough because just like in academia, being an artist, people say this is what like this is what I listen to when I paint, and like this is all those sorts of like ideas of what an artist is exist. And because of that, we have to constantly, like for me, like I'm always looking to kind of, what do I want? Like, and like I was talking before with this whole like tugboat idea, like if I'm putting music on, right, or if I'm putting on NPR, or if I'm putting on something, that'll give me credibility, right? Like that'll give me like, oh, this, I'm not just painting, I'm, like give me value, give me like, be more productive, and which I get hung up on as well. Then all of a sudden I'm like, is this really what I want? Or am I giving myself an actual like ticket to check out and not be present with what it is I'm doing? Like, I'm not to say that music does that, but just because there is conversation within the industry in which I have engaged that revolves around things like, this is what you listen to, this is what defines an artist, this is, like, and then I would attempt to be within that space. That then told me I wasn't living for myself. And again, this sort of thing came through my recovery, right? Through my own understanding of like, well, who am I versus like, who am I being told to be?
Yeah, well, it makes me think about a teacher once said this to me about ideas being frozen energy, and that being a culture that's so in love with ideas, it's like there's a stagnation there, because within every persona, every idea, every ideal, it's not true to the flow of what existence is. And so the more energy you invest in this thing that's stuck, the more you're investing in being stuck, right? So as someone who has worked hard to like identify ways in which I'm wearing a mask or stepping into a persona, that was really helpful for me to think of it as frozen, as it being something that's completely divorced from reality.
Yeah. When you mention like ideas, and we're a society that cherishes these ideas, I remember when I was younger, I had a conversation and I was telling somebody, like, everybody's motherfucking aunt has an idea. Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. like ideas don't do anything, right? They don't connect people. They don't make anything. Like, an idea is just stagnant, like, until you're driven to act, or until you forcefully act. Either way, really.
It's I'm thinking out loud here. It's supposed to be the impulse that pulls you forward, but instead we get stuck with just that, right? We enshrine what should be part of a larger and longer arc.
Right. Yeah. But we want instant gratification, so we lose interest.
Right.
And that's why we need those carrots. Because when we say, well, if you're not doing this, you're not doing it right. Well, then let me do it your way. And then that creates what we know today as the economy.
Right. But it's also, I think, to go back to sort of early childhood development, it's the sign of a culture of people who don't know what they want and who live in a realm of being told what they should want or what they want looks like, instead of finding it for themselves. So it's really just trauma. It's a arrested development culturally and emotionally that then manifests itself in these ways. I can see you're on board.
Yes, I am very much on board. It's one of those things where it's like, we're constantly being told, from many different places, that we need to do certain things, right? And school really sets us up to take those things seriously. And if we do, then we'll be good workers, quiet, not expect much, just kind of get by. And that's something that I have no intention of being, and never have. So,
well, that's the fun thing, right? Is that some of us rebel immediately and we're like, no, none of this. And some of us dive so deeply into that we lose ourselves, speaking about me, and then have to come out the other side and do the work that we might have done at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old at 35, 36, 37. You know what I mean? Like, it's
right.
It's funny how that wound, or that pivotal point, we react in different ways.
Yeah, but we all have to, we don't all have to get through that, right? We can just be there. But if we want to, again, like in my language, like recover yourself, recover that whole, recover that God within you or whatever, like that's the work. And
Yeah. And it's so, I mean, it's wonderful to see the progress in my own life, but it's also just one of the great joys of my life to sit with someone while they're doing that for themselves.
right,
Because what worked for me doesn't necessarily work for them. However, to see them finding their own way instead of having someone tell them the way is in itself a kind of magic that is just beautiful every single time.
absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, like we don't have anybody's answer,
Nope.
right? Like, nor can we. And so, you know, one of the things that I always like to try and do is just remind people that, like, look, I can't do anything for you. Like, you're here and you have to do the work. And I can help you see some shit, but other than that, like, I can help you make those questions, but I can't help you find the answer. Like, that answer is within you.
Right.
And if, like, again, like, I'm always in conversation about, like, well, if that's my message, how am I valuable, right? Like, to other people, how do I make a living and stuff? And that's what I got to kind of keep putting behind me,
Yeah.
because it's such a weird space.
Agreed. Here's the way I look at that, because I wrestle with that myself.
Yeah.
I look at the sort of Jungian archetype of the mirror, and I say that my work is to become the clearest possible mirror for other people. Right. And there's something deeply valuable about that. Like, how often do we get to sit with someone who is present with us in a way that most of us can't be, right? Like, who is that? Who can be that mirror that is just giving? I mean, that's what you're doing with the portrait, right? It's a
Right.
mirror, something that's giving me enough information about myself to keep doing the inner work.
Right.
And we can't do this work without being in relationship. We need those
Right.
mirrors. We need, whether they're uncomfortable mirrors or they're pleasing mirrors, whatever they are,
Mm-hmm.
we need that. So there's immense value in that, she tells herself.
Well, keep telling yourself that, because we do need that. And I want to tell myself that. And no, I mean, I agree with that completely. Like, there is a lot in that, and I am, always trying to, put myself in a better situation where like, again, this idea that what I have nobody wants, right? Like, that's my trauma. That has nothing to do with the reality of what's happening, because what I have, I know people want. Like, cognitively, I know it, but there's a disconnect between the belief I have deep inside that keeps popping up, because that is a disconnect between me and me. Ultimately, yeah. So yeah,
It's a lens, to continue
yeah,
this
absolutely,
glass-based metaphor, right? It's a lens through which you don't even realize you're looking at the world.
right. And that
Yeah.
and that's where trauma kind of takes hold, and allows and I allow it to kind of take the reins, which is silly.
Well, I wouldn't say silly. It just means that there's more to learn there.
Right.
Sorry.
No. I left myself open. We are coming along, I think. This is very nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Um,
What a conversation. We've ranged all over.
I don't remember it. I hope that's okay.
Well, luckily it's been recorded, so.
Oh, that's right. That's nice. Yeah, no, that's one of the greatest things that this project or doing these portraits has for me, is that I'm present in different spaces, right? Like, there's a part of me like my cognitive mind is really just working on the painting, and my, whatever conversation that I'm having is just being had. I'm not controlling it at all, or I'm trying not to, at least. I mean, because if I were to just allow that to be my focus, I wouldn't be able to paint, so now it's
Yeah.
like great because I can do both. But again, this is like, I started doing these portraits in the year 1999, so like I've been I've been doing this for a minute now.
Wow.
So
I don't know if it's my Gemini nature or what it is, but I have not been doing anything since 1999. I am always reinventing, revisioning. And I think there's probably value in that. I often say that I'm a dilettante in the best sense. Like, people always look down on dilettantes as, people who don't commit to anything. But when there's so many cool things in the world to like dive into, yeah.
yeah, no, I'm doing my portraits in a different way than I did in 99. But like this was like, these portraits are me seeing me,
Mhm.
and that's the that's the beauty of this, of what I do, and my work in this realm. It is my work, and that makes it, so beautiful for me. And it was after I got diagnosed with MS that I decided to come back to doing portraits, like, because it did hold answers for me, and it still does, right? Like, this is how I connect, and this is how I, express in so many ways.
Mm.
But people always tell me the same thing, like, stick to one thing. Like, one person told me, you stop doing portraits, as my art, just when it was about to get good, just when it was about to like knock over. And I was just like, well, that happens, and then I had a production company and all this other stuff, so
Wow.
not as if I I've only done my portraiture, but it's just been that steady thing that I do.
Yeah, it's the thread, it's the through line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned to you that my portraits were a big part of my sobriety, and about me kind of, really owning what that looked like. And so, when I found myself, bedridden through MS and whatnot, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do when I get back from this? Because I'm not going to go back to doing production because there's too much stress in it. This kind of triggered this thing. I want to be able to get in touch again. So I came back to the portraits, which, now they're different. Now I'm attempting to have them do more than they did before.
Mm.
And talk about that openly, and with purpose.
That's really lovely.
So you're a vortex healer.
Yes, I am. Yeah. You want to know more about that?
Yeah, I'm still working.
Yeah, so I was introduced to energy work about 5 or 6 years ago. I had a real, how some of us have rock bottoms every now and then. We've had several in our lives. I had one.
No, I never. No, that's
One about 5 years ago. Um, it was sort of like a realization I was living the wrong life and still trying to succeed by means that were not mine, and dropped a lot of things that had been important to me and tried picking up things that I had kept in the back of my mind as something I might be interested in. But maybe when life gets more stable, when I have some free time to indulge. And instead, those things became the focus of my life. And one of those things was learning energy work and learning more about the human energy vehicle. And at first I thought it was going to be Reiki. I was like, well, I've heard a lot about Reiki. It seems like it's pretty easy to find someone to learn it from. We've talked about that. But then along the way, I discovered, I met a woman who's a vortex healer, and she said, well, one of our teachers is doing this free webinar healing. So it's free, it's in your own home, you don't have to go anywhere. You could just try it out, see what you think. And I was like, fine, okay. I was still pretty dubious. And holy moly, if that wasn't the craziest, coolest experience. Like, I was like, whoa, there is really something going on here, and I want to know more. And my
I want to know more.
my cognitive mind is like, how did this happen? I need to know
Right.
details. Like, I want to know it. So I took the first level class, and a lot of stuff came up for me, and I started to see how this was a really interesting way of digging into my issues and my stuff and working through them instead of getting lost in them.
Yeah.
And I could share it, like I could work on other people. And I found that it worked beautifully with my life coaching. Like, it was something that I could do to enhance or support while also doing inquiry and asking them questions and mirroring back for them things. And so I just keep taking more vortex classes, and I have a practice at this point. Thanks to quarantine, my schedule's more flexible. I'm running a session for myself pretty much every day. And yeah, I love it.
It's awesome. So can you talk to me about vortex? Like what like what attracts you to it? What is like what is it for you? What do you like?
Yeah, it's hard to describe. So vortex, of the energy work modalities, I'd say is pretty out there, which I think is hilarious for someone like myself who was probably verging on atheist 6 or 7 years ago, and would not have been on board with any of this. But it's the idea that we are each trying to become a clearer channel for the divine. And the sort of lineage holder for vortex healing, this guy named Rick, he lives in Massachusetts. He is so good at mapping how we hold our issues in the human frame, in the human system. It really helps my academic mind to be able to say, okay, these are the energy bodies, and these are the ways that separation consciousness or our issues are encoded, not just in our physical body, but in those energy bodies. And these are ways that we can work with that to release that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, what I love about it is that it has nothing to do with me. My ego is completely out of it. This is not me doing anything. This is me working with the divine, me having a real connection with source to facilitate whatever awakening or healing is necessary for myself or another person. So yeah, it's really complicated. Like, at each level, it's as complicated as it is because we are complicated creatures. And so we talk about this concept of the karma knot, which are ways in which there's sort of like dense holes in our system where we hold our issues. And to release one of those is to start being able to let go of that. Like, and these are deep things like loss, abandonment, anger, really deep stuff that has a myriad manifestations in your outer life. But to get to the root of that and start untangling that is just exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome. And what was your first experience? Like, you said it was like, well, good. What, like, a lot of pronouns in terms of this was that and wow, but like what
It's hard to describe.
I noticed, yeah.
Let's see if I can put better words to that. So I think for me, it was physically, it was tangible. It wasn't an idea of something that was happening. It wasn't some sort of cosmic blissful experience. It was, oh God, I feel like my throat is constricting and this is really uncomfortable. Like, what is going on here? And oh, my toes are on fire. Why are my toes burning? What the heck is happening right now? Because I'm just sitting in my living room on my couch and there's a woman on the screen meditating and sometimes breathing really quickly. I don't know what's going on, but all I know is that it's landing on me in a way that is uncomfortable and yet fascinating. And I can tell is also beneficial. Like there are parts of me that are waking up that I have ignored or have dissociated from. So there's something I want to know more about here. I want to know how to do this, you know?
Right.
Is that a little better?
That's a little better. Now I've known Alan for years. So and how did you meet Alan?
When he first moved to Charlottesville, he was offering group vortex healings, and I attended one.
Okay. As I met Alan through my portrait work, as I had mentioned to you earlier. But I've been to a number of his group sessions when he was doing them here in Chicago. So yeah, I think it's a really great healing modality. Now, like for me, healing modalities are awesome, and I love that they exist and stuff. And the fact that, what you mentioned, this idea of untying the karmic knot, is a real thing that I want people to be able to do without the third party or whatever, like just to have that in their system, right? Because that, again, like that is yourself, right? Yourself is locked up behind all of that which you believe, or all of that which you all of that separation, all of that like trauma, all of that like work, whatever, that is in there. And when you can release that or be comfortable with facing that, even, that gives you a power of healing. And then the natural process of healing, like, when we cut our skin, we know it's going to heal, but our psyche has those wounds as well, but we keep touching them. Like we keep just kind of going like, oh, well, this feels bad. Like my value is not with me. Well, let's just do that to it, right? And then it just stays, that wound stays open.
It does, until we've learned enough from it.
Right. But you have to learn, and that's why we have to open. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. And that's why, that's what vortex healing is there to do, to open you up so that you can stop fucking touching it.
Right. Or to go back to the lens, right? You can start to be very aware of how it's affecting the way you perceive the world, right? So like one of the things that happens sometimes with vortex healings, so a person coming into an energy healing session might think, I'm going to feel so much better after this. This is going to make things better. Sometimes what happens, and especially if I've done like a training, so I've been really ripening my system. Let's say you're working on abandonment. You step out of that class and bam, the world is going to show you. You're going to get into a situation where the world is going to show you the ways in which you fear abandonment, the way abandonment has shaped the way you deal with people and conceive of your place in this universe. That is not comfortable. That is not blissful. That is not easeful. It's extremely disorienting, but it's necessary for that growth, right? So it's not for the faint of heart, is what I'm saying. Sometimes.
Well, I don't think any of this is. I don't think listening to us talk is for the faint of heart.
You think?
Because we're saying you're responsible, right? We're saying it's your, like, we're saying that you can do this. But I mean, it's so much easier to check out and watch Netflix, or to check out and, you know, smoke weed, or check out and like drink, or check out and get angry at people, or check out and be a victim. Yeah, that goes without saying, right? Like, people love that shit. They are into it. They want to check out, right? But for those who want to grow, there is space.
I want to offer sort of a lot of compassion to that place of wanting to check out, though. Having been that person, it takes a lot of suffering to want to be there, because I think that in general humans do want to grow.
Yeah.
The seeds of divinity are within us. So there's a lot of pain and trauma that keeps us wanting to escape, and that's the whole point, right?
And you know, when I talk to intensive outpatient programs, now these are programs where people were forced to go to a program through the courts. One of the first things I tell them is, I'm not, and nor do I want to be responsible for your sobriety. If you want to go out and drink, I'm not trying to tell you to not. That's not, like, I get it. And if you need to do that, go do that. But I don't want you to be doing that because somebody else is making you double down on a bet you made 10 years ago because they're telling you that you shouldn't be drinking.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between people that are checking out and people that are proving. I think a lot of people are proving versus actually checking out. And if you're checking out, you're one step closer to getting out than if you're proving. Then you're just one step deeper in a hole.
Wow, that's a lot. Yep.
So again, addiction. It's fucking like it's a, like, I'm telling you, my addiction taught me all this shit, right? Like, but not all at once. It's like, I know that I want to be in control. So I want to manipulate a situation. Well, if I want to manipulate a situation, I have to be honest with myself, and then I have to be honest with others. I want to be able to open that conversation up so that we're not playing games. I want to be honest about where I'm at, because, and if you don't want to be honest, not you personally, I mean, I'm sure you do, but even you personally, if you don't want to be honest, I have to be okay with that. If that makes me upset, where else in my life am I not being honest, right? Because we're reflecting each other. Back to the beginning of this conversation.
Well, vulnerability is really dang hard. It's really hard. And there are moments where it feels easier not to be vulnerable, even though in the long run, you're cheating yourself of the connection that was possible, right? This is a lesson I have to learn like every 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. Things feel easy, but everything is just as hard as everything else.
But how beautiful is it when you take the risk and be vulnerable and someone else takes that risk and you can meet there?
I remember there was a rift between my brother and sister. And what was happening for years was one person would put out an olive branch and the other person would shove it away. And then they would feel bad. And so they would put out an olive branch because they shoved it away. They're going to, and it's just this cycle. And being on the outside, I'm just watching this happen, going like a tennis match that's taking years, right? Of just like over and over, until someone was just like, no, I have to offer my olive branch 3 times. And then, like, right, like once for them to slap away, twice for them to be kind of cautious of, and then 3 times to prove that, like, you're not trying to be a dick. You're not trying to lull them into some sense of calm so you can, like, you know, pull the rug out from under them.
Wow. And it worked?
Oh, well, I mean, relatively.
Okay.
I mean, like, the rift is somewhat over, but I think there's still enough where both of them are like, there's no opportunity for me to kind of really prove, and that's fine. Like,
Yeah.
they are where they are, and when the opportunity arises, they'll act accordingly, as they need to, not as would be best for the situation, because who knows what that is.
Right. Right. Being an only child and having obviously no siblings and a very small family as well, I think that the story of my life, the first part of my life, was that I should figure out how to do everything by myself. And the story of the last 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer, has been relationship is key. Being in relationship with others is actually going to help me heal. And I'm going to get to places in relationship with others that I can't by myself. Like, I can't go up on that mountaintop and just like meditate my way into awakening. There are places in me that need another person, that need those hard situations and the beautiful situations to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've for years, like, I was in a space where I was always looking for, like, all of these portraits or relationships to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are relationship sort of experiences, and they're intimate, right? Like you and I are experiencing a very intimate time right now, right? We're open, we're vulnerable, we're talking, and really, like, and I don't know about your experience, my experience is I'm talking and I'm sharing things that, if I had enough time to think about it, I might not want to share. Right?
Audience, yes.
Right?
Yes.
But just being connected to you, because, like, if I stop and, like, focus, I bet, like, look, there you are. Right? Like I can just kind of, like, experience your energy. Right? And that is something that is, like, touching and beautiful, right? Like, and 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 that's what I see as relationship, right? Like, that is like, even if you're closed off to my connecting, that is relationship, right? Like, and I mean, you're not, but like, even if that
Yeah.
were the case, because a lot of people, they're like, whoa, they don't know what to do with it. Especially if, like, you do something like that and then they feel it, they're like, oh my God, no, like, right? Like, they're like, you're in me, and I'm just like, well, yeah, but we all are. Like,
Yeah.
can't just hide that,
It's all just more information for us,
Right.
right? Like, if there's an open communication, well, then that's a certain kind of information. If one person is open and the other person is closed, well, then the person who is open, how they feel about meeting that wall, that's information for them to take
Right.
away, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's all helping.
Yep. We are wrapping up, by the way.
Okay.
I don't know if you're just like, how much time?
Well, actually, I am praising whatever gods of electronics there are that my internet has held out, because it can be a little wonky sometimes out here.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
so I'm just so proud. My little modem's chugging right along.
Out there in the woods.
Yeah. That is something I didn't know was the case, although it makes perfect sense if you think about it. It's hard to get good internet out in the country.
Yeah, the nice thing about Spain, in how I've experienced it thus far, is that, the countryside exists in between very short distance cities, so it's not like it's like 20 minutes is a long drive for them, right? Like for us, like you said, growing up in an area where like 45 minutes, everything was 45 minutes away, like you can get from in between three major cities in 45 minutes in Spain. So it's older. They've built shit up longer.
And when was the first time that you experienced Spain?
Probably lifetimes ago. But no, it was 6 or 7 years ago. I got family there, and I have my grandfather's from Spain, and he had left my family, and that's a long story. It's not like it was a bad thing. Like he thought he would get custody of my father, but didn't. And so so he ended up, working all around the United States, and it was the 50s, and so he didn't have any claim to my dad, like my dad's mom did, and so I found him 6 years ago. So that was how that panned out. And then before I knew he was alive, before I found him and all that stuff, I was driving from Madrid to Galicia where he lives, and I was driving past all of these old little towns in between cities and stuff, and I was like, that's where I want to live. And it was just a passing thought because I was still a diehard Chicagoan, and meaning that I would never leave Chicago, but if there was someone else. And then about 4 years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and within 6 months, I said, at one point I said, I'll never leave Chicago. 6 months later, I was saying, I'm not going to be here forever. And when I questioned that, I said, well, where else would I live? I just said Spain. So that's where I'm steering. Whether or not I end up there isn't the point. But it is where I'm steering. So we shall see.
That's fun.
Yes. Never know what can happen.
You never know.
Never can tell.
So I was poised to, I think I may have told you this, I was poised to take a sabbatical. I was going to travel starting in May. My plan was to go to Iceland and the Faroe Islands, and Scotland too, perhaps. There's a spiritual community in Findhorn. I was thinking about visiting, like a pilgrimage. And
it's funny you say pilgrimage, yeah.
I was being pulled toward these windswept cliffs, and these rocky seas. But of course, the world has changed, and there is now a pandemic, and the chances of that happening when I thought it would happen are pretty slim. But I still feel that call, and I look forward to at some point figuring out why I want to stand on a windswept cliff.
Well, that's western coast, Western coast, and that's Galicia, right? Like there is something about Finisterre, which is where my cousin's husband lives, or his parents live, and that Finisterre in Spanish means the end of the world, like the end of the land, and it's just this amazing just end of everything, right? And
isn't that the end of the what's it
Camino.
called? The pilgrimage route.
Yeah, Camino de Santiago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
David White has an amazing poem about
What's that?
David White, the poet, has an amazing poem about he calls it Finisterre.
Finisterre, yeah. Can you recite it?
No, I do not have that memorized.
You're an academic. I thought maybe you have that in your back pocket.
I'm not going to lie. I have some tucked away for special occasions. Not that one.
I was going to say, you got to have at least one, right? can't call yourself an academic if you can't recite like, a Robert Frost or something, right?
Oh, Robert Frost is way too pedestrian.
But you can recite one.
Not really, just the one that
Okay.
everybody knows. See, the trick to being an academic is to know snippets of enough things that you can drop in a conversation and lead everyone to believe that the whole thing in its entirety is within you, but it's not. It's
Right.
just a little bit.
Yeah. It's all.
I'm sorry, academics who heard that and now know what the secret is now.
She's giving away our secrets. It's like a magician giving away her secrets.
That's okay. I've been exiled from that realm for many years now, so I feel like.
So did you do anything to get yourself proper exiled, or?
You just, by choosing a life other than an academic life, that is the worst possible thing you could do from an academic standpoint. So that's all I needed to do.
What's the name? You're a fan of the movie Virginia Woolf?
The movie?
Yeah.
I don't know it.
Or the book. You know the book, right?
No.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Oh, well, that's a very different thing. I was thinking of the
Sorry.
Virginia Woolf. Oh, why are you apologizing? Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is a play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a movie.
I mean, they made a movie. I think Betty Davis plays the mom in that, or mom, whatever.
The couple that like are constantly fighting, right?
Yeah. But they're like academics, and there's this whole sort of like, backdrop of academia and like raising children and all this other kind of stuff.
It's funny, I've forgotten that part. I think I was just traumatized by all the yelling and alcoholism. My God, there's so much drinking.
Well, that's a big part of it, right? Like it's a big part. Like these two like academics that don't have children. They try to have children, whatever, and they but their lives are torn asunder through this sort of backdrop of importance and understanding like me and understanding like the intellectual game and other stuff like that. It's a like the way I look at it as being someone who is very biased against academia, right? Like it was like, and again, I say these things and I'm working on it. but I have to recognize the fact that some of my desires today and what I want in my life have to do with that bias, have to do with I want respect from that world, right? And that's a back and forth that I work with regularly, right? Because I know that they're not my desires, right? Like it is me having proof, right? Proving that I have value by having something that I feel like turned me away, want me, right? And so those are things that like I work with, and so it's not like I look down at academics any longer.
Any longer.
I would have very much like 6, 8, maybe 10 years ago, I would have very much like challenged your academic status, like because I was a dick, right?
But the funny thing is, as much as we're talking about it, this is I haven't thought about it in ages. Like it's ingrained.
No, not you. Anybody that would be in it. Yeah.
Right. That's what's funny is that's become it's been a big part of this conversation. And what's so funny is that feels like feels so far from who I am now. But it's true. Like you're showing me the ways in which it is foundational. Right. I'm just entertained by that.
Yeah.
Because for me, I realized I could succeed in that world and actually was doing a pretty good job of succeeding in that world. But guess what? It was deeply unhealthy. It was killing me to succeed in that world.
Right.
So I had to make a different choice.
And I'm grateful you did. we would have never done this portrait of you. We would have never met each other.
No.
You would have been out there living
Here's
in
hoping that
Charlotte.
by now I would have found a tenure track or a tenured position.
Right. And
That's
you'd be done.
alternate universe.
Right. And you'd be done. You'd be like, oh, I got it. Done.
Oh,
No, I mean you're type A. You would have continued.
no, but that's not how academia works. Like, there's no resting on laurels.
Oh no.
No.
I was sure that that's what they did.
Mm-mm. Nope. The publishing gauntlet never ends. The conference circuits and the teaching and the service and the committee meetings and the blah, blah, blah.
The committee meetings. That's so nice. So I am going to mail this to you. You'll see it before. Like, I'm going to show it to you now.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's me.
That's you. So I'm going to mail this to you. And I can send you, like, I can take a picture of it with my phone and I can text it to you as well. If that's something you want. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna mail it to you, and then you'll have it, and that's it. And that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Wow, this was fun.
Give me a moment. I'm gonna shut down all of the live stuff, and then